Meeting number 17, May 7th, the last one before our second public hearing. The agenda is in front of you. I do need a motion to approve that agenda. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, and the meeting from the minutes from last week's meeting have been posted. So I do need a motion to approve those minutes as well. So moved. Second?
Second.
All approved? Aye.
Aye.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move on. So in getting ready for the public hearing, which is Tuesday, the 20th, a couple weeks off, Linda's staff has started to put together some slides, and she's here to talk through the slide deck. Also took advantage of some great work that Jeremy did over the last week, and I know that's going to be included in this. The purpose of tonight, the primary purpose, is to go through these slides so we're all cognizant of what we're going to be presenting to start off that public hearing in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Talk through these. We're not looking to overhaul this slide deck. We are looking to tweak it as necessary. If there are things that you see that are not quite reflective of where we are, then this is the time to bring it up, because Linda wants to put this to bed within the next 24 hours and post it so it's on the website and can be reviewed by people who are contemplating attending the public hearing, perhaps testifying. So with that, I'll turn it over to Linda. We'll have a couple of items after this. They're fairly modest, and I would expect we'll probably be out a little early tonight. We will be talking about where we go next after the public hearing. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for that. So what I have prepared for you is the presentation that we'll be presenting at the public hearing. I want to post this up on our webpage. So what I've been doing to date is, as you all have been making your motions votes, I've been posting them on a combined voting sheet. So that way, everyone that's watching this can pay attention to where the committee's headed, since we don't have a report out yet for them to be able to react to for the second public hearing. I thought that was a good way to start with what the public hearing will be about. And at that point, we're seeing what was passing and what was failing. So I think it's important that as we set the stage for the public hearing, that this presentation will serve right now as the de facto report of where the task force is headed for when we do get to that reporting phase. So in typical fashion with a public hearing, we're going to go through all the perfunctory kind of agenda items. One of the things I thought it would be good to do for the public that will be there is kind of just go through the background about our first public hearing, what some of the main topics were, and then going over the background of this committee about really had a lot of meetings, which is good. I know that's been a lot, and we've done a lot over the last 9 months, and all the different topics that have been covered. And the new 10 new APA recommendations so far. And I'll explain the 10th one. I want to show you one of the ones that I would like us to take up tonight, because I think it's something that we've overlooked in our discussions. So I want to bring that to one of the last ones, and then any other discussions you want to have at the end of the evening. But so there's been a lot of information covered. And so what I do is I've taken the motions that have passed that have actually been recommendations that will be forwarded as part of the report. And formulated them into this PowerPoint presentation. But before I could get to the recommendations, I think it's important for the community to know, because some may not know, they might be coming in and not really understanding. Okay, what do we have now? So kind of talking about what are the 3 tests we currently have for APFA. I'm not going to go into any great deal about any of this tonight. I want to get to the meat of the matter. How we do those. What is this allocation chart, kind of going over the basics of what this is? What does that map look like of where they're applied to geography base? So we have the columns, the geography. What is the school capacity test? What is this bin that we've all been talking about? I know you can't see this. I'm gonna zoom in and get a better version of it. This is kind of a placeholder for now. But these are the old numbers, not the new numbers that are coming out very shortly. Where the closed schools are versus the open schools. And this is the, elementary. And then the middle high school.
The new report comes out on Thursday,
Thursday, yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
so tomorrow, but that also means it's already available on Board Docs.
Yeah,
I saw it yesterday.
yeah, I was gonna wait for is that official on board docs? I didn't wanna,
Yes.
oh, okay. Didn't wanna, anyway, I didn't pull it down for this. Obviously, this is a placeholder for now. And then talking about what are the current APFO exemptions to the school's testing? And then what are the new recommendations? So the first new recommendation is the one that we've all talked about, is replace the APFO schools test with the utilization premium payment fee modeled after the system used in Montgomery County. And I know this is a lot of words, but captures the motion. So that instead of required wait time, developers of residential units are charged an additional fee calculated by applying the UPP factor to Howard County's existing school surcharge fee when the development's impact on the projected school utilization of assigned schools exceeds the adequacy threshold. And I do have some graphics, so it's not going to be all words. And so there's going to have to be some explanation.
Wasn't there like language about tailored for Howard County that we included in that motion?
We do.
Mhm.
And I took that out because this isn't the motion, this is the recommendation
Oh, I see. Okay,
Yeah.
so you took the motion and turned it into a record.
to a recommendation, because they're not gonna know, I made a motion that, right?
Mhm.
The motions are gonna be posted and they're gonna be in the final report, but these are just the
Got it.
recommendations,
Okay.
right? So we know it's always gonna be tailored for Howard County.
Yeah, I just
Um,
feel like people will appreciate that language.
Pardon me?
I feel like residents would appreciate that language, that we didn't just wholeheartedly adopt what is done in Montgomery County, but.
Yeah, we just said that was modeled after.
Yeah.
But-
Is the primary audience these recommendations, the county council or general public?
This is for the general public, for the public hearing.
Yeah, I'd agree. I would include tailored for Howard County.
All right, I'll add that back in. All right. And then in the UPP model, you use these thresholds, the 105, 110, and 115. These tiers will be applied to elementary, middle, and high. I guess to me, it was always implied we were doing it for, because doesn't say anything about Montgomery County. Obviously, now this is the Howard County model. And then in the UPP model, use the 40% premium payment for tier 1, 80% for tier 2, and 120% for tier 3, using that 634 distribution, and then this represents a distribution for elementary, middle, and high school. So then I would go back to the explanation of, here are the schools. So what one would do is look at where you're at 105%, going back to these thresholds of 1.5, 110, 115. That's how you know what tiers you would be in. So then using Jeremy's list, knowing from the chart and what each chart is that would be adopted each year, utilizing these rates, you would know if you're in the yellow, orange, or red. And then based on that, you would know then if you're in tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3, and then what the percentage premium payment that would be utilized for each of those schools. So then using this graphic to demonstrate how that payment would work. Does that make sense so far? Kind of how I'm starting this.
It makes sense, but Linda, I think we've all been through this and we all
Right,
deliberated and then made
Understood.
decisions and the recommendations. The real question is, this is really complicated.
I know.
So I guess my point is that you're doing nothing other than showing us what you're gonna talk from. You're not actually talking about what you're going to say. And I think, for me at least, I want to know, what is it you're gonna say? Because I don't know that we can be constructive in reviewing this without having,
I have not written out my talking points yet. No, so that's fair. I have not written out talking points yet.
Well, you can send them to us and we
Yeah.
can get a chance to look them over.
but the key thing so far, I think the most confusing thing is this whole 105, 110, 115, because those percentages existed in the last APO, but they have nothing to do with the UPP.
Okay, so what are some takeaways then from this I think would be helpful?
Well, if we're gonna talk about what exists and what we're proposing, then we have to reference the 105, 110, 115, and most people probably in the room are gonna be fairly well versed on that. But I think we just have to make sure that those are the overcrowding numbers for elementary, middle, and high school under the current APFO, and what determines whether or not a school region is open or closed to new development. Whereas 105, 110, 115 are for in the new system, are for determining the level of premium that a project must pay
Right?
if it's reporting into schools that are overcrowded.
Okay, right, I understand. So how would you want to explain that though? Just in those terms to differentiate the two or?
I just think we want to make sure that we're pointing out that 105, 110, 115 existed in the last and they exist in this, but they really have nothing to do with one another. In one case, they determined whether or not an elementary or middle or high
Right.
school was open or closed. In the second case, they determined what level of tier the premium payment will be.
Right, they just happen to be the same numbers,
They
but not
happen
the
to be the
same,
same
right?
percentages, but they don't have anything to do with one
No, but they mean different.
But they mean different things, right,
another.
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you have a chart there for how much funding you're getting, but you're not explaining that it is instantaneous, allowable moving forward without any closing. If there's an overcrowding situation.
No ways, I have to be pretty clear. I have a quick question. I'd be careful not to say it has nothing to do with each other, because the effect of it has nothing to do with each other. Like what those numbers being derived mean two different things, but they're derived in the same way. Like you have 105 overcapacity acknowledgement that is derived mathematically the same way in the old system and the new system.
Mhm.
It's just
Yes.
being labeled a 105
Right.
plus school means two different things with the two systems. And I think people can understand fairly quickly and easily that in the old system, it meant you have to wait or you're beyond hold. And in the new system, it means there's no hold and that it determines how much fee you're gonna pay for this, like, for being in this.
I would explicitly mention that the intent of the systems are different. Like the intent of the system we're proposing is that rather than closing a school so that we can somehow find money somewhere to increase the capacity of the school, we're explicitly basically telling developers, here is the cost for the additional school capacity needed because you want to put something here.
Yes, and the benefit as well, which is the again, ease of development and additional revenue. So the advantage of the new versus the old. So the capacity threshold percentages are all the same, but we're not closing anymore the schools. Instead, we have the UPP, and the UPP is going to make development a lot easier, as well as increased revenue for the county. So I think having the advantages in there will also sell the idea.
These are just suggestions for
No,
you.
these are good. I'm just writing down the talking points. Okay,
Pauses served an additional use according to the State Department of Planning. The purpose of an APFO is to do smart growth initiatives, which yield development toward where there are existing resources. Pauses were a mechanism to shift development to where there was an abundance or an overage of resources. It wasn't just wait to find money. because supposedly the school surcharge was sufficient, if not above the amount needed to provide adequate capacity. And we found out in all the budget hearings that is not the case whatsoever.
Makes me have a question what Brent just said. Is there gonna be like a minority position on these recommendations spoken at the hearing?
I had not planned on it. That's certainly something we can do. I mean, we do have the minority opinions posted in the votes.
Thought that was done when we presented to the council. I thought that's when the
I
minor.
mean, it's in the report, so, and that can, it's however you want to present to the council, however you want to present. And it would be in the report. We did say we would do that, but we weren't, I was going to present that portion
Right.
during this presentation. Yeah.
About it, I was just curious, thank you.
Is there any merit in just walking through a very simplistic example of here's what this means if this middle school, this high school, and this elementary school were over capacity?
How much time have you allotted to the
Yeah.
introduction?
About a half hour.
About a half hour into the introduction. So when you ran through these slides the first time, did that take you a half hour?
I have not written out talking points, so I have.
Well, no, I mean, just like going through
In my
it in your
mind,
mind as you're,
roughly.
yeah, so what you've got there already is roughly the half hour.
I agree. I think an example.
Okay, so I think after we do this slide and this slide,
It's helpful for me learning it.
and then so then I just say, here would be an example using, the,
Oh, so you had it in there already?
Yeah.
not really an example, but here would be an example of schools, if the percentages are over, that would be over, but, over the utilizing these numbers coming from these charts, these are schools that are closed. Or in the, I shouldn't say closed, in the
But
different tier
such
structure.
an example
But
would
we-
be,
Right.
and again, stamped draft hypothetical for discussion purposes only. You don't want anyone to say, what do you mean you're gonna build my backyard? But, if a development with X number of units was put in this spot, which is, by the way, in an elementary school, it's in tier 1, middle school in tier 2, and high school that's in tier 3. Here's what the financial impact would
So that could be
be.
the next slide. I can do,
That's a good idea.
that's a great idea.
And yeah, like the existing school surcharge fee and
Mhm.
how this UPP is applied on top of that, I
Mhm.
feel like is an important point.
What I would say,
Sure.
how people currently apply it. So you would say, okay, first of all, if any of those schools are closed, the development doesn't move forward. So that would be option 1. And this option, here's what would happen. And here's the
Correct.
payment.
One of the things that Linda and I were talking about, and I don't think we've ever talked about it in any of our meetings, is that, not every student in every elementary school goes on to the same middle school, or every student in every middle school goes on to the same high school,
Right.
but everything's organized by polygons. And I'm sure you can talk about it much more eloquently than I can, but one polygon might go to Phelps Luck Elementary and then Tuxton Valley Middle, it won't, but, and then Thomas Viaduct High School, or there's a Thomas. Anyway, the point is that it's by polygon, it's not by school. So when you do a project, you have to look up, what's my polygon and where do we go? And you could have a project across the street, literally, that is going to a different middle school or a different high school, all going to the same elementary school. And so you never really know until you know the exact address and the exact polygons of how they track. So it's not like you can just say, okay, the elementary school is Phelps Luck, and then that goes on to Dunlogan Middle, and then that goes on to Marriotts Ridge High School. It's not the way it works. It's by polygon. So it's a little more complicated actually than just the schools. It's by polygon.
There's a little bit of irony in that. three different layers. Those layers change, the boundaries change each and every redistricting. And ironically, some of the ones who call out for the most frequent redistricting so that they can move ahead and avoid the APFO tests, have to do it by this changing polygon arrangement each and every year, potentially. We haven't done that lately. We have in the past.
Actually, Jen, how does that work now?
In her,
Where,
be more specific.
well, there's redistricting and then there's repolygoning.
Okay, so a polygon ideally contains 100 students at the elementary, 100 students at the middle, 100 students at the high school. That's not actually accurate. More likely, it's 100 students at the elementary level. And then if a polygon becomes significantly larger than that, then a polygon can be split. Repolygoning, or actually making additional polygons, happens at the Office of School Planning level outside of redistricting. It's based on the ideal number of students in a polygon. And of course, you're going to have some polygons that are significantly below and some that are slightly above, but hopefully it's not too much above. As well, those are somewhat constrained by egress and ingress. So like we have some larger polygons around the Deep Run area because there's only one entrance and exit, and it doesn't make sense to split them apart. So, so once you take the ones I'm thinking of actually are pretty much adjacent to the school. So you're not going to split them necessarily. It serves no purpose to split them apart. But in terms of redistricting, it's every year as part of the feasibility study, is it recommended to redistrict based on have those thresholds been hit? And it is by school, not by polygon. But then when you actually move things, it is by polygon. So you can move some subsets within a larger area in order to balance out capacity. So it's a bit like not a matrix, not a Venn diagram, because Venn diagrams overlap. But if you had, one of the things that we found in 2019 was that sometimes we had polygons that would make sense if they were split and half on maybe the north side of a road went to one school and the students on the south side of the road did not, because of how you might run bus routes and that kind of thing. It may make more sense. And in general, you want your polygons to be compact so that they're not sprawling and not arbitrary. And they try to stick to major roads. It can become tricky when they align with major roads, but don't look like it on a map. And there's some areas in Elkridge in particular that like the only ingress and egress are through roads and go to a school this way, but visually it looks like 95 runs right through it. So you would think, oh, we'll split on 95, but that doesn't make sense because they don't access 95.
And you also have some stability and instability based on the feeds and percentage of feeds.
Yes, and so your goal is to have 15% or more moving from elementary to middle to high. And now I don't know if we still have it. At one point, we had a couple of full feeds where all of one elementary went to one middle. That entire middle went to one high school. I don't know that those still exist. And if they do, it's like one or two. In general, most middles feed to 3 high schools, 2 to 3 high schools. Most elementary are only going to feed to 2 middle, hopefully 1. But then there's also, like, depending on how you look at feed, it's what percentage of a high school population is fed from that middle school. A good example is Wild Lake High School. They have maybe a 12% feed coming from Dunlogan. So when we're looking at the upcoming redistricting this year that would go into effect in 26-27 for Bryant Woods and Centennial Lane Elementary, we have to evaluate, are we sending kids from, let's say, Centennial Lane, maybe they move south to Running Brook or Longfellow, but they may be walkable to Burley Manor and Centennial High School. Well, we currently have no feeds from Longfellow or Running Brook to those schools. So then do you consequently shift them from their existing pathway to Wild Lake Middle, Wild Lake High School? So in every move, you've got to consider the upstream and the downstream.
So from a development project perspective, it's the address determines your polygon.
Yes,
Your polygon determines the 3 schools, the 3 levels.
yes,
And then the utilization chart determines whether or not there would be, under the
Premium.
revised system, whether there would be a premium payment.
yeah. So while it's determined by polygon, I don't know that there's enough developable land that people are going to say, okay, I only want to buy in polygon 132.
Right.
So I don't know that we need that level of granularity to be explained to people.
Right.
No, I agree. And this is a great aside for the whole committee, but we've never talked about it, and I think it's interesting and helps our understanding of how students track through the system and how a project would then deliver students to the system and whether there's a premium payment or not.
Yeah, but like any given address is only assigned to 1 elementary, 1 middle, 1 high school.
Correct.
And so the county has this really good map tracker. You just put your address in and it spits out what the
It's
assignment.
Find my school.
Yes.
Yeah,
But importantly, only 1 per for 1 year. In any given year, it could potentially.
sure, of course. But at any given time, you're not assigned to more than 1 school at a level, obviously. So, you know, at that point, you type in, you figure out what your address is, you figure out what the schools are, you look at this UPP chart and you'll be able to calculate what your premium payment.
The other component is we're trusting that this money appears in absolute perfect ratios in order to resolve the situation it's being generated from.
That's your issue.
Right, that's an important assumption to be laid into this. That is the assumption that's been made.
That it's better, not that it's just
Sufficient.
coverage, sure, yeah.
There's a big difference between better and sufficient.
Okay, so I will draft a hypothetical development situation and I will send this out prior to the publication, but. Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Okay, so then the other thing we talked about, so the 4th recommendation was continuing to use local rated capacity as the APFO school capacity. And that the 3rd year of enrollment projection over the school capacity at local rated capacity. So again, same method we're always using. So no changes there.
I'm going to recommend that you write it as an equation also,
Okay,
because not everyone is going to understand the
Right.
over.
Can I go back to something real quick?
Yeah.
When we very, I think, dealt with very well the explanation of the tiers, but there's this sentence about the 634 and the percentages here and there. And I think that we should describe with a sentence or two what 634 is referring to, when you then go to the percentage that adds up to the 40 and the 120. I don't think people are gonna know what that 64 means.
Do you have to adjust the wording?
Yeah, like, I assume, I mean, somebody else could say it better than me, I was confused with it before.
Next to the six, right, K through 5, in
Yeah,
parentheses, next to the 3, 6 through 8, and next to the 4, 9 through
But,
12.
but, but
And
I
even
think
in,
that
I was gonna say K through
the main thing is that you're telling people that before the money.
sixth grades.
yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, I mean, I think showing the percentages, showing the actual
Yeah.
chart of what the UPP is
Sure.
and those actual percentages by tier and by.
This
Which you do.
We do.
It's just-
Yeah.
Yeah,
saying
but
that-
then
Yeah.
showing what they are and then explaining how you derive them
Correct.
as opposed to explaining how you derive them and then showing what they are.
Yeah, I-
Distribution. Funding or targets.
Of the overage over the basic third surcharge is going to these.
Right, so this is the distributed funding
Yeah.
over.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome, no, thank you. That's why I wanted to come and do this.
Great, thanks a lot.
Okay.
You left off on number 4.
Okay, so I'll make that into an equation. Okay, so then, again, we've been talking about this, UPP model, and we're gonna apply it not only just to our current development, that would be in a I don't know how to say this, but basically we're gonna apply it to affordable housing and the affordable housing column on the base rate surcharge. So currently, see, affordable housing is not exempt now, we're not asking it to be exempt, so it's no difference than what we have, so it just applies to everyone. So I think I need to figure out a nuance when you say that, but we're gonna put that forward as a recommendation.
The key is that with both senior and with affordable, the UPP is applied to, as it says there, the base surcharge rate.
Right.
For each of those categories. So right now, there's a base surcharge rate for senior, there's a base surcharge rate for affordable, there's a base surcharge rate for everything else. And the UPP is just a percentage.
It is lower too than the
We should
typical.
probably say how much lower it is. I think
Yeah.
that'll be very helpful.
Yeah, because,
And then saying we're not exempting the percentage increases, say that would be.
yeah, I think
I'll
without,
list the rates.
I mean, understanding what those base rates are and how affordable housing and senior housing are already significantly lower than normal development. And so by applying the same percentage.
Yes, that's what,
Yeah.
Jeff had the chart, it was great.
Yeah,
By the way, have you reflected last Monday's rates with CB18?
I have not.
That's important.
So the CB18 that passed was at TOD, does not pass the schools test.
Yeah.
And then the same thing for senior housing, just as for the affordable housing. And so those are all the school housing issues. So now moving to roads, again, just, hadn't really talked about this, I'm just gonna make a highlight there. So now the roads test that we talked about. I worked with Office of Transportation, still want to get a little more, I want to work with them a little bit more on the graphics, and I need a little more help from them on what they developed. But, again, they wanted to rename the roads test to the APFA multimodal transportation test was one of the motions that we took. So that was a recommendation that's being put forward as of now. Recommendation 8 was to adopt the pedestrian crossing at the Echo intersection test and the two-road transportation test. Okay, it's a lot of words. So this is how they consolidated it. So they did a summary. Developers reviewed the same study intersections as defined in the existing APFO roads test to provide pedestrian crossings improvement for inadequacy. So I think I still would like to have the explanation from them where they gave us the schematic of the intersections. Did you think that was helpful also?
Yeah, picture would be very helpful.
I think the picture is better here. I think that's what I'm gonna also ask for in addition to this.
Try to say it as simple as possible when we
Yeah.
get into the public, like we voted and recommended that development requires enhancing crosswalks near the development, like something as simple as that, and then like have the details somewhere. publicly
I
that
have the
people could-
details. I
could
mean,
go
this
to,
is-
but, like,
Yeah, I think I like the picture saying so, whatever the test is, here's the picture.
Yeah.
And just how they explained it with that picture, I think is better. This was an attempt at trying to make it a little more succinct, so I'll work with them to get that picture and kind of make this a little more easier to read. Yeah, it was a lot. And then going over recommendation 9, which is adopt the ADA access to existing nearby bus stops, to the transportation test, which is 2 words there.
Again, picture there would be.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah. Yep, so then the same thing here, was kind of consolidating it to this summary, so I'll ask for another picture here as well.
I guess just a general observation, your objective isn't to make all of the attendees of this hearing conversant in every detail of this.
In 30 minutes.
It gives them a general sense of, here's the direction and the overall intent of what the APO committee was trying to convey. And
Absolutely, but they need to have enough information to be able to comment appropriately.
Sure,
So, and we did a lot of stuff, a lot of details in this, and, yeah, but you're absolutely right. Okay, and then finally, this was one recommendation, I put it in here, it's not an official recommendation yet, but this was the talking point that I thought maybe, I was gonna throw out to the committee, and have the chair, if you would bring it up for discussion. We did have the the Affordable Housing Working Group come in, and they did ask this committee to, talk about defining or accepting their definition of affordable housing. So I'll just leave it at that. I put it in here now just to have in case it's something that, wanted to move forward with. Their other recommendations in some ways are moot because that had to deal with, again, the adequacy percentages. And since that is no longer the path forward, that doesn't really, it's a moot point now. And we are decided to continue with the UPP and exempt affordable housing from that at the last meeting. I think it's important to have that definition as well in here. And this is what the recommendation was. So, and then that would be kind of at the end, public hearing reminders, and then start the public hearing. And we would have the same process as we did last time. We'd be in the Banneker room here. We would call people up 3 at a time. And typically we give 3 minutes for a speaker to testify. And then if you're from an organization, like you're representing, we give typically 5 minutes for them to speak. And hopefully we'll make it through the evening.
We didn't do that at the first hearing, we didn't give the 5. So if we're gonna do that now, that's gonna be used.
It's gonna be what?
News,
News.
To the public.
the 5 instead of 3 firm.
Yeah, I think it was just an oversight on our part. I mean, that's been our typical
So I mean,
practice.
is that, we are definitely doing that?
I'll leave it up to you, Ron.
Excuse me, I have a
I just wanna
question.
know what to tell people.
Yeah, you want to know if you're going to be off the phone meeting?
I just-
No,
I
no.
just want to say, because she just now says that we were, and we didn't before, and so I think that's just something we should Be
We were
clear.
pretty lenient on the time, I think, last time though, but.
Yeah, and people did really well with the time. I don't remember too many people having an issue with it.
If we just want to keep it to the 3 minutes, where I think we kind of just overlooked it.
I would make a motion to keep it just to the 3 minutes like we did last time.
Does it have to be a motion? or
No.
you just have- Yeah.
Think, see how many, people we have would be helpful in deciding, the time allotted to each person. Because if we say 3 minutes and only 10 people show up, I mean,
Well, there'll be more than
maybe
10.
two people show up and we say you can only speak for 3 minutes.
How many did we have last time? 23? 26, and there'll probably be more this time.
Lisa,
Yeah.
what do you think? I mean, should we just leave it all at 3?
There were complaints the first time, but I think it makes sense to have it the same as last time.
Consistent?
Yeah, I do.
Anybody object?
Just a question, where's the 5 minutes come from? Is that a standard?
And traditionally in the council,
Standard council.
Traditional.
groups get 5 minutes. Individuals get 3.
Yeah, it's in the rules and procedures. If you, like, say you represent your homeowner association, you would get 5 minutes for some of the
Yeah.
boards we have,
And
but
Jen,
typically it's 3.
BOE, it's not standard operating procedure for the Board of Education. It's just standard operating procedure for the county council.
Yeah,
So.
and planning board's done it that way too. Okay, 3 minutes, we leave it there. All right.
And a question, Linda, the fire department, they come any at all on the APFO? Reason I'm asking is I have a good friend who's a captain in the fire department. And, he feels strongly, that they should have some, say in APFO because, their department come under a lot of pressure based on developments and, there are restrictions. I'd like to invite him to testify. But I'd like to know if we have any, gravitas, so to speak, as far as the fire department.
We've had a lot of discussion about that.
They came and testified at the last
And-
one, if
and-
you remember.
We,
Not in an official capacity. I think the gentleman just.
There was a gentleman who
Yeah,
we
came.
have
who's a
five
firefighter.
Winston come to these meetings.
Should we maybe, but I don't think we voted on that, right? Those are still in the parking
Yeah.
lot. So maybe should we have at the back of the slide that we haven't gotten to voting on certain categories? Because I think the fire department,
Yeah.
like first responders is something that we intend on voting on.
Sure. All right. I have a question. Anna. I think any of us can ask anybody to come. I mean, anybody can come and testify on what they believe
Yeah.
they want us to do, or they want our photo to look like, right? And they get to come, they get to speak 3 minutes, anybody can come and do that. I was going to ask, since you brought that up, I was gonna ask if we were going to say, you, it's Linda doing this, not you.
Yes.
So it's Linda, okay. So when you're making this presentation, I think at the end, it might make sense to let people know that we're not finished
We're not done.
and that the current model in the county, there are things we're going to recommend in case the council doesn't want to do a UPP model, that there are other things that we are going to address. And, because I think if I'm out there, and I'm looking at this and it's all news, I'm going to be wondering, wait, you've been meeting all this time and you have this recommendation, and what if they don't want to do this? Are you going to tell them anything else that they should be doing? So I think we should mention it.
It's the whole nature app for the, we're just, making recommendations. So I think it's the whole nature of the committee.
I can't count for every scenario.
Everyone can speak, but fire EMS, and there's another one that APFO doesn't necessarily govern, but they should, thank you, and that they should still speak.
Water,
to their ask.
Yeah. I think so. I think the emphasis has been heavily placed on schools and, fire and, EMS, those are vital, resources for the community. And we really should look at them and see how development impact them and how we can provide them with adequate resources.
I mean, we do fund them and do a lot with, is there a specific test? We don't have a specific test for them, but they're always, when we do development plans, I'll speak from the development perspective, we do always go to fire and EMS to make sure that they are looking at the plans and know what's coming through and making sure that they find what's being proposed sufficient for their their programmatic standpoint. I mean, they did come and speak with us.
We have motions that we've submitted that we just haven't gotten to, so.
Yeah,
Right,
that's
and I-
what
But that's exactly right, and I think rather than trying to identify specific things that are still out there that might be motions that we would consider in the past, I think we just have to make clear that we're not done, but this is as of now, this is the status of our work. And we'll be reviewing a variety of other options that we say are sitting in our parking lot for future consideration, so.
Can we also say, but we will definitively be done by X?
We have to be.
Yeah, we should tell them when we have to be done, yeah. People have asked that a lot. Emails,
My wife keeps asking me.
And you have to be done by August according to the code.
The August, right, when we started.
It's really like August 20 something.
The other reason I don't want to be specific in terms of identifying items that are still under consideration is we haven't debated and deliberated them yet. We don't know if they're going to pass or not pass. So we can't say that, oh, we're going to be making a series of other recommendations because we don't know if we are or we aren't. We may, we may not.
We could just say we're going to make a series of recommendations. We just can't say what recommendations that we'll make.
I think it's like
If the motion-
Yeah, if they fail, yeah.
But we could say that
Let's say
there are
there's a
motions
still-
on the current model, they're going to hear.
Yeah, there's still a number of motions that we haven't gotten to yet, including motions related to the current model that we intend to
Exactly.
get.
Exactly.
Wait more.
And that's where we leave it.
I think the ones we haven't gotten to are the ones that are ABFO adjacent, right?
Oh, no, well, it's the current model, it's not the UPP model, there's all kinds. I mean, we haven't even talked about, if we don't do a UPP, how long should the weights be? What should our capacity be for high schools? I mean, we had a few that Brent had posed that were going lower. We haven't talked about staying the same, we haven't talked about anybody saying they wanted to do more. So, you know,
Going lower motions all failed.
exactly, but I'm saying there haven't been.
We spoke about
we-
them, they all failed.
We did,
Yeah.
I meant, that's true, on going lower, but we didn't vote on keeping them the same. We didn't vote on if anybody wanted them to do anything higher. We didn't vote on the amount of wait time.
I'm sorry, I thought you said we didn't discuss them.
Oh, no,
Because the
I'm sorry.
motions were
I
all-
said that. I meant that we haven't heard what we would do with the current model regarding current or higher percentages, regarding wait times. So, yeah, I mean, those are the two biggest pieces of our current model that I think the public is wondering what we would recommend from the council that you want to do this.
I guess we can't accommodate every scenario. We have a recommendation, that was our job. We gave them recommendations, and they don't like it. We have to go with plan B, but they don't like that. We have to go with plan C, and we don't have the time.
We don't have the time to do a lot, but those are the two biggest things I think people are going to expect us to vote on in our current model. That's just my opinion.
Well, that's not something we need to resolve tonight in any event. What we're trying to do tonight is make sure that the outline of where we stand is clear and that we're referencing the fact that we do have additional motions that we need to consider. We don't need to characterize it beyond that. I think it's, and frankly, it's part of the reason we have the public hearing is that we're still open. We haven't closed as a committee yet. These are decisions and recommendations that we've passed, but we're not done. And we're here tonight to listen to you, to take into account anything else that you may raise that we've not considered. That's the purpose of being there that night. So I don't have an issue with that. Where we go from there is the next question, but that's not for tonight and it's not for the public hearing.
Yeah, this is good. I appreciate this. I think it's quite.
I will write it much nicer than this
Thank you.
and send it around.
So do we need to talk about number 10?
Number 10, I'm sorry, the
Can you go back to that slide, please? Number
Yes,
10.
so, well, do you want to be done then with?
It is.
With where you are now?
That's what we have. I mean, I wasn't gonna add anything more. Thank you for the suggestions. My game plan is to get this out to you tomorrow, like mid-morning.
You've done a great job.
With the,
Thank you.
with the cleaning up of it. And, again, I don't really want to spend more than a half hour, 40 minutes. So I want to give time for people to speak, but I want to have this, up for at least, it's going to be a little less than 2 weeks or so.
Yeah, you'll have this up for the public to read long
Right.
before they get there.
Yeah. And we'll have some printed out copies for people who may want them and to be able to comment on.
You want printed copies, is that what you said?
You will have some at the public hearing, yeah. I think it's important to have those for everyone.
When this gets posted, is there gonna be any public announcements or social media outreach to say, hey, here's a slideshow that goes over the recommendations for the public to review prior to the hearing?
Well, how do you advertise the hearing?
We did, so we advertised it, in the paper and just through our different media outlets that we have that have been posted, yeah.
So you'll just post.
But we don't have like a Facebook page. We, being DPZ, don't have a Facebook page to post, but we'll,
You should have one.
I know. we don't- we're not allowed.
You should have. Why aren't you allowed to have one?
But I'm sure our friends will get it out there. Our various friends will
Give us
just
recommendations.
make sure it gets out there.
Oh, no, not recommending the public hearing itself.
No, I know the public hearing has been well advertised, and that was more we were asking. Or is this slide presentation so folks could review it, understand?
It'll be in a
Yeah, well-
notebook, right? The slide presentation, will it be in
It'll
a
actually be
notebook?
front and center on our,
Yeah.
yeah,
That'd be good.
on our APCO page.
All right, so thank you, and then let you.
Did you all want to do anything with this? You don't
Yes.
have to, I'm just throwing it out there.
Right, so there are actually three things that we could be considering tonight. That's one of them, whether we want to go down the definition road for affordable housing in kind of in line with what the Affordable Housing Coalition has presented us previously. That's number one. Number two is, should there be some sort of time option? Are we looking to give a project sponsor a time option to avoid paying a UPP? So right now, of course, there's no UPP, but they could wait 4 years. Should there be a no UPP payment, but you have to wait 4 years as an option?
Oh, I thought that was built into it. No, I thought it was either you paid the money or you waited the 4 years.
No, there is no or wait any, because the wait now is defined on whether or not all three of the school levels on the charts are open. And when you go in first year, you fail first year, then you go to year two, you take the test again, you pass, you
Well,
fail.
I think the new law that was just passed and signed by Governor Moore, I think it does in the law. Doesn't that law limit the wait to 4 years?
No, that didn't pass. It failed.
Well, there's the ABFO, there's the law that just passed, where they are requiring every county to come up with some sort of system, to quantify development and give people an option. And I thought there was a 4-year limit on that. I'll have to pull that up because
Well,
that was signed by Moore.
Okay, it's okay.
Yeah.
I've been following those bills, and
That's-
the bill that had to do with the 4-year cap failed, but the bill that you're talking about
Mhm.
with the jobs to housing
That-
ratio,
that's-
those things.
That failed as well.
Yeah, that's not the one I'm talking about.
But the ones that passed have a caveat in them that give local jurisdictions the right to limit, and it uses state rated capacity by percent for APCO.
Yeah, they don't, it doesn't drill down so far as to what the schools are. It's really more that it's a mandate from the state that each county.
But
I thought the 4 years
We
was.
take them one at a time.
the point is, we're off course.
Yeah.
The question is,
I don't think that passed.
I was just
On-
saying if
on
it's a
the-
state law, we would need.
I'm not seeing that as a past.
Okay.
I'm looking at the state laws that went through from the housing perspective.
Mhm.
as it stands now, we don't have a wait and no pay option in what we've had. The only question is whether we want to have a wait and no pay option. And if we do want to have that, what does it look like? So I just throw it out there. We don't even have to resolve this tonight. It's just an issue that has come up. Are we gonna give a wait and no pay option as opposed to a straight up, right now, the UPP system that we passed is, if you're at 120, you're at 120. You pay it, or you don't. If you don't want to do the project, you don't do the project. There's no wait and no pay option.
I'll be brief then. When we talk about our goal in the committee having passed this, we have to stick with that goal. And so I think it should not be voluntary. If the goal is to get the money, because the money is more important than the weight, then you have to stick with that goal and get the money. So that's all I'm gonna say about it.
I concur with it, but, and also would add on, concur with what you just said, but would add on that if they want a wait but no pay, that's today, we have that. And what you talked about in terms of fine tuning that current system, that is your wait and no pay option.
Well, true, and what we've recognized is that the wait and no pay option is meaning things aren't getting done. So,
But a wait and no pay with the UPP proposal diminishes it. It just says, yeah, this is an idea, but
Jeremy, looking to jump in? Yeah.
You know, I was gonna say, I felt like when we did that motion, we recommended it was instead of waiting, that there was no wait option. So, I mean, to the extent people come and they testify and they say, I really think I want this wait option, then that is good information for us to go back and consider. But I don't think we should vote on it today and present it as a potential option.
It might be good.
And I also think with,
Slide.
yeah,
To let them know that it's mandatory.
yeah.
Yes, that
Currently.
might ease that.
And the other way the system works is if any given school that is in a higher tier is relieved either through redistricting or a new capital improvement process, then that school is going to drop out of a tier if it goes below the utilization percentage. And therefore, they already have the option to wait and hope that happens. But it might be plans that happens. And then the school would drop off the tier list.
Well, I mean, that's one thing that from a planning and zoning perspective, like for us, like we would have to, when would we set that? I think it would be the same as when the first test would be taken for APVO, is when that fee would be set. So then how does it happen if you wait it out? So do you know what I mean? I think Todd, you would understand, like, so at sketch.
Well, like I said,
Right,
if we do nothing to what we've already done, there's no option. It's only a matter of whether we want to take up the issue of adding an option. I agree. I don't think we should, but it's out there. So if there's no motion to do it, then there's no reason to vote and there's no reason to continue pressing forward on it. So,
Yep. I just,
The weights in lieu, I don't think is smart. I think we should just stick with what we have.
I kind of hear unanimity in this regard, so let's move on. The definition of affordable housing is the other one, and the last one we did talk about in brief and then never came back to it, and that's, and I think I already know.
do you just want to address affordable housing? Because we have.
All right, let's go.
Can you make that?
Go back to that
screen
slide,
bigger,
yeah.
type bigger on
Yes.
that? Some of us are somewhat visually challenged.
yeah, I'm gonna go, I'll make it into presentation mode.
Just for number 10. That's all.
If we don't get through like actually getting our own decision made on this tonight, would it make sense to just lay out what the Affordable Housing Committee asks for?
Mhm.
Just so people see that, and we don't necessarily have to,
Yeah, we don't have to have a
Figure it
motion or
out.
decision tonight, yeah.
yeah.
Well, could someone explain to me how this definition would feed into the APFO regulations? Like, I think it's about how the allocation chart is applied, right? Like how many
Yes.
units are affordable, and they want a clear definition on how to
Correct.
define them. But I also understand that the way the allocations work is there seems to have been such a backlog of allocations that it's not really an issue to begin with.
Okay, so. I'll try to do the presentation justice. And it goes to our definitions of how we do the MIHU, LIH, and DIHU, and the affordable housing. And so we wanted to make sure that our definition, how we pull from that column, you're right, it's not an issue now, but I think moving forward with this UPP, it could become an issue where we have to pull from these columns now because develop is being more spurred on more so by that. So and some of it might be moot too, because now we don't have the adequacy thresholds. So it was really to make it qualifying for these qualifying projects to be considered, to be exempt. So to meet those thresholds for the exemption, to not have to be exempt from the school testing criteria, which was number 1, 2. So now.
School testing criteria they adopted.
So that's a moot point now, because now they're paying the utilization. So that was part of the juice. So projects that met that criteria threshold now, we're no longer going to, the recommendation to make them exempt from that, the entire project, not just the units that are the affordable units. So the housing unit granted allocation from the affordable housing column as provided by the work group, projects with other income requirements could still qualify. For example, like the LIHTC is even lower, so they could still qualify for this column as well. And also to set the definition of the percentages as part of our zoning regulations, you need to have certain percentages of homes that meet those thresholds. So depending on what the zoning requirement would be, that they meet the affordable housing definition. So that was also part of the requirement. So that making sure that those affordable units meet the definition of what the new affordable housing work group definition was. So it was also to help facilitate that as well. And that's also what the housing and community development that they use in the housing opportunities master plan and how they've defined it. So just being consistent with all of that.
So with respect to our proposed UPP system, it's twofold. One is pulling allocations from this column.
Correct.
That's number 1.
Yeah.
And number 2, what's the school surcharge? Which of the units are eligible for,
So the ones
to
that meet that
define
criteria.
school surcharge for affordable? And then you apply the UPP on top of that
Mhm.
for those specific units.
Right, based on this definition.
Correct.
Thank you for making that much more succinct than I did.
Is there already a definition for school surcharge? How to define what is eligible for that lower base rate for a school surcharge?
That's right off of Jeff's
Yeah.
chart
Yeah,
from last week. Yeah.
and it's different than how the housing, the
I'd have
affordable
to
housing
look
coalition
for,
is recommending we define it?
Oh, the definition as opposed to the chart, the surcharge
Yeah, yeah,
level?
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
this.
that I don't know.
Yeah, I
That's because if they're recommending that they need a
I'm not
definition,
100%
like, I would
sure.
presume there has to be a definition
Yeah.
to qualify for whether you have a lower
Yeah.
base rate. or
Agreed.
school
I'm sure
surcharge.
there is a definition.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that definition is.
I think what she's saying is to have some consistency.
Yeah.
Because right now there's a lot of inconsistency.
Mhm.
So
And I don't know what that exact definition is. I'm not sure where they pull that from, so I'd have to look into that. That's a very good question.
well, I'll tell you, a lot of people don't know that this would be good to make it well known.
Yes.
There's a very good reason it's not published. It used to be in a yearly reauthorization bill that the council did during the budget cycle ending in July.
Why
In
did
the
they
last
get rid of
4 or 5 years, they had the, whatever, the 2012, 2018 conversion adjusted for inflation, but they don't go through the reauthorization. They just let it, somebody in this nice brick building adjusts it on some random date, and people applying for building permits find out at that point. I think for the purposes of reading my cheesy spreadsheet, or whether you're planning and doing your perspectives, that should be something that should be required as part of the annual report.
You mean setting an actual rate?
Setting the declaration of what the rate is.
Since when they say
The
60,
historical.
when they say 60 to 100% of area median income, that translates to a specific number, but, because you have to say, what is the area median income? Is that what you're saying?
Tell me the charge, the school charge.
I'm talking about the school surcharge, but
Yeah.
quite honestly, all the inflationary indexes should be published annually when they take effect, what their rate is, and what their historical rate is. You know, the fact that we got people from DPZ who don't even know, no offense, what the rate is, that's crazy.
Remember when Jeff was saying he was looking up 815 and he was trying to determine the base because it was about to be adjusted for inflation again? And I think what Brent is saying is that when you have things adjusted automatically for inflation, they don't create legislation anymore to set the rates because it's like, that's automatic now. We don't have to worry about it. But unfortunately, what in practice that ends up having happen is that they're not published. And it's such an important piece for the public and even developers to know exactly what the heck they're going to be paying when and when this is done. But it should be published.
Well, that's kind of I think a separate. kind of-
Yes.
Yeah. It's a functional issue that the county needs to address. I don't know where we fit into that, but the key thing for us is, are we going to adopt, a 60 to 120 definition for affordable housing? Is that the definition we want? Or that's for, if I remember right from the slide, that was for sale. Yeah.
So in regards to this.
Yeah.
You're trying to make a definitive declaration. What is affordable housing to be applied to these kind of random overlay for affordable housing, 300 units per year. We did discuss, and we need to verify whether market rate units paired in a project with affordable units count as market rate units and are applied as if they were, or whether they're also part of some glommed on special exemption. And I think it's very critical that everyone is aware of the difference between picking from our county median income and the Baltimore metropolitan area median income. Effectively, the Baltimore metropolitan, there's a lot lower income, so you would have, pardon my phraseology, more deeply affordable housing using that than using the Howard County rate, which would allow much higher units to suffice as a income housing.
Correct.
And I know I butt heads with the affordable housing people over school issues, but frankly, I would be very supportive of them getting the Baltimore index so that they get more effective affordable housing for their exemption purposes.
Well, they suggested the Howard County median income.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's counter to their mission.
I'm not going to judge their work,
Yeah.
That's what they want, but that's fine. So the question is just, it seems to me like we need to just defer on this.
Okay, that's fine.
Anybody?
Why?
Well, hold on.
Why not?
And we'll see
I was
what-
gonna say, I was thinking I'm happy to make a motion.
Make a motion.
To 60
Okay.
to 60 to 120 and 0 to 60?
No, I was going to move to adopt the Affordable Housing Working Group recommendation for the definition of affordable housing and its application and housing allocations.
Yeah, that's good. I would second that.
Any discussion?
One thing I would
Yeah,
say,
well,
based on, so I'm scanning APFO as we're discussing. There is no definition for affordable housing.
I know,
Um,
it's a problem.
And weirdly enough, it's kind of mean to say there is no definition, but it kind of is no definition. It is a very relative based term. This is not relative. I mean, we can quibble on these names, but I'd be in favor of putting this forward.
I think there's some state legislation that's been passed in the last couple of years that actually has a firm definition of affordable housing.
Well, we don't, but
But every
We
bill
don't.
has a different one. There isn't a county division.
so that's just it. There is,
Yeah.
the county definition for affordable housing is,
But this is the proposed language.
it's different.
That's fine.
Yeah.
The Affordable Working Group, right?
The APFO language for affordable housing doesn't really exist in finite terms, except for this
And
recommendation,
it should,
but it should
it should.
if we're going to say that affordable housing should be granted.
Right.
X
Well, we know what
benefits
that
or not
means.
granted X
Yeah.
benefits. So,
And this is their recommendation of the Affordable Housing
Yeah.
Working Group. So all we're doing is codifying their recommendation and bringing it into APFO. as a
Which needs to
definition.
be done.
right, it would effectively update literally the affordable units
Yep.
statute.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that to that part of that flow.
And that's what, Jen, that's what your motion says.
Yeah.
Precisely. So
I have a question about the recommendation, what those numbers are. So we asked for 60 to 120% on sale housing to be defined as affordable housing. And they asked for 0 to 60% of rental housing, the income for rental housing to be considered affordable housing.
Yeah, but her motion isn't to specifically say this. Her motion is to say that whatever they say it is,
Okay.
that's what we're gonna use.
Got it.
That's what her motion is. Her motion isn't this.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, she was just saying, let's do what they say it is.
Done the work.
Right.
So let's not argue.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
exactly.
And just to clarify,
Yes.
who's they?
The affordable
Affordable
housing.
Housing Working Group, which is,
Okay.
I took the words working group from here, so I'm assuming that's what it was titled.
Okay.
Okay, so can you restate your motion, please?
Sure. And would you like it in print?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I said all the time, and they're like, I mean, that's literally.
You wanted to see what the.
Really?
They want this consent.
Well, the whole.
I'm not sure what it is. The slide that we put up there, we should probably more
Of course, I
precisely.
saw it out.
Well, you could follow the USDA, the USDA federal.
Here, I'm gonna-
Follow it.
It says 0 to 60% of median income. Okay.
Linda, you got-
How can you
Pull that together.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Vote on.
It's that.
No, I'm aware of that. I'm saying on the slide.
One slide,
Yeah, it
this
makes
is
sense.
how it goes. Gets affordable
That's
housing.
right. What is 60% of what?
Okay.
60 to 120% of the median.
Well, so like-
The houses.
Well, So if you look, so the way they do it with USDA is if you're trying to qualify for a USDA loan, which is designed for lower income people within the county to be able to afford rural housing. And it's also based on the number of people in your family. So the 120% might be if you have 5 members in your family. If it's just you and your family, it's 80%. And there's an ascending scale based on how many people you have in your household. So that's why, at least on the federal level, it goes up to 120%. And it is county by county. And you can literally just go on their website and they will tell you what the level is for each county. And then you can tell them how many people in your family, put the address in, and they'll tell you. It's very straightforward.
Linda, are you,
So intuitive, so thank you for that.
are you ready with,
Yeah,
language for the motion?
yes.
Is there any more discussion on the specific motion?
I mean, the county code has a definition of affordable housing and it keys off of either a state or federal program. So if the project is getting federal funds, then
They have to
use the definition of
That's the
affordable.
DHCD,
Yeah.
the Department of Housing and Community Development uses those definitions.
Well, and then this is also the definition that they use for the surcharge to determine whether or not in the school.
Okay,
It says it refers back to this.
and that's the same definition that we're getting from them too, because that's what the housing affordability work.
So they want to change this essentially.
No, I think that's,
No, they want to change the APFO one, the APFO doesn't have that.
and that's the saying that,
AFO points to this one. AFO adopts this definition.
my understanding that this definition is pulling from those definitions. But for Howard County.
So the AFO.
So what is, right, so my understanding is from the Housing Affordability Work Group is that that should be the same definition.
It says, it says this is the definition from the Downtown Columbia Partnership. That's the one that they use for the surcharge, for the determining whether or not your fees, the development impact fee.
What is that? I'm just curious what the definition says. We need a table.
That's section 2.28.
28.116, affordable housing.
I'm just going to reiterate, I hope everyone knows the difference between those two index rates and how it affects the.
Yeah, it's huge.
families that can occupy these.
Well, and that goes back also to federal funding because Howard County is in the Baltimore matrix, it's not in the DC matrix. So when you go to look at what conventional loan limit are, Howard County has a lower conventional loan limit than Prince George's County because we are in the Baltimore matrix. We are not in the DC matrix. So that's probably where the Baltimore comes from, is what they do at the federal funding level for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
But to Brent's point, and it's he's exactly right.
Yeah,
If the
that's what they want
The
to do.
limit is 60%, and the Howard County median income is, I'm gonna pick a number, 100. Picking an easy number. So that means that the family makes $60,000, they qualify for renting in an affordable unit. If they can go all the way up to 60, so the building owner knows that, and he knows he can price his unit so that a family making $60,000 can afford his unit. If instead you use Baltimore and it's 80,000 instead of 100,000, it's 60% of 80, which means that the family is now making 48,000 and the project sponsor can only charge a rent that a family making $48,000 can afford.
Which is about $1,400.
Which is, so to Brent's point, it's counterintuitive for the Affordable Housing Coalition to pick Howard County as opposed to Baltimore because it limits the number of families that can qualify for affordable housing, or on the flip side, it allows the project sponsor to have a higher rate for his affordable units than if he was off of
Right.
the Baltimore
Yeah.
price point.
Yeah.
Or median income.
So did they specifically say when they made this recommendation why they chose Howard
I
County? and
don't
not
know, I'm
Baltimore?
just reading it
I
there.
can't remember what the recommendations, I mean, I'm happy to go back and ask them, when they presented to us at the,
Right, but
But could a developer even
On the March
build
meeting.
something at that price point if they followed the Baltimore? I mean, what do you end up with? You know, I mean, because if you're talking 60%, I mean, I just don't even see how they
It
can
does
even
affect
build
performance,
something.
but it also affects intent.
Yeah.
right, exactly. But what I'm confused about now, Aaron, is how this tracks with what you're reading.
Well, I mean, I'm
Or
also.
is it contrary?
In APFO, right, so for the allocations, there's a definition of affordable housing. Right, there, I mean, at least 40% of the units are affordable to households earning 60% or less. The project, you know, is led by a nonprofit or with the housing commission, the project.
Right, but 60% or less of what?
This is metropolitan statistical
This is
area,
metropolitan.
it's
and they,
not Howard County.
Howard County. And so they feel that's more advantageous to have Howard County
Yeah.
number.
Well, and this, I mean, this keeps going, I mean, there's more, if it.
And
if
it's
it-
not replacing all of that too, just that part of the percentages.
Sure.
Then they
So
just-
just the,
we're not gonna get rid of those other items.
because it also says that if it complies with any state or federal assistance program for affordable housing, that would
We
be
would
the
not be getting,
definition.
and again, this is just the recommendation for
Mhm.
that percentage
Mhm.
portion, it's a recommendation, right, for that piece.
So it's just the 60%.
Right, you're not recommending to wipe away everything else.
So just for reference, I was on the precursor to this housing committee. They were very proud to get these allocations. They already had an exemption for affordable housing allocations. So then the ask is, how can we convert this into something to benefit? And ironically, whether or not it goes forward or not, striking all the school wait times just removed one incentive that could be handed out. Now what do you do with these allocations, which you already were getting exempted from regardless? And that's the ask right now. So converting the metrics of what the maximum rate is, that's one thing. I'm sure there's a follow-on to this, which will be, can we cluster these, stagger them, add extra density or something? A way to monetize these 300 units of overlay really are duplicative.
And I don't want to get into, because I've done low-income housing tax credit deals through Department of Housing and Community Development. It's unbelievably difficult, and wait time is a huge problem because you're waiting and waiting and waiting, hoping to get through the tax credit process, hoping that your project gets selected, and then now you have it financed, now you have to go through the ACFO hold. I mean, it's unbelievably hard to hold a project together for the amount of time you need to get through the whole process. So, in any event, I think the benefits of reducing the wait time to a low-income housing tax credit project are enormous. Enormous, because the time is so difficult, because you're not holding you don't own the land, you have a contract. You're trying to keep the seller on board while you're waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for years, literally.
Yeah.
It's very hard. And I don't want to go there with this. Aaron, what I want to ask you, because you've got a good grasp on this, is the structure of the motion that Jen has put together sufficient for our purposes?
I have to see it again. I really don't.
I mean, basically, she's just saying, let's follow what they come up with in Howard County. Using Howard County numbers.
Well, for the allocations chart?
Yeah, the
Or-
allocations.
The allocations chart and just the general definition.
It wouldn't have authority on other, they wrote a bunch of bills outside of it. So
No.
this would supersede maybe a conflict.
But that's for the county council to decide.
Right,
This is just our recommendations. You adopt the recommendations
right.
that they recommended.
For adopting.
We just want to recommend what they recommended.
So I'm sorry, Jen, you moved,
She's first, I'm
you
second.
second. Okay. Anything else? Man, we're good at talking things to death, aren't we?
Let's
No,
call
this
for
is
the-
good.
Yes. Call for the vote on this.
Mr. Arterburn?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Casagrande?
No.
Mr. Jamio?
Yes,
Did I get it right?
you did, yeah.
Mr. Usleton?
Yes.
Mr. Glykoff?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes,
Mr. Lovelace?
The index would negatively affect their recipients, no.
Ms. Mallow?
Yes.
Ms. Markovitz?
Yes.
Mr. Scherer?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Okay, the other one that's come up several times, is the whole idea of whether there should be a lockbox for the UPP and practical purposes, the school surcharge to go to the affected schools in a projects area.
Mhm.
So I just want to throw that out there, something we can ignore or we can take up. If we want to take it up, we would just have to move, we want to specify where funds need to go, or we leave it as is, which gives the school system the discretion to make recommendations to the county, how those funds should be allocated. So I'll throw that out there if we want to take it up, first of all. And then secondly, if we want to actually push it to a motion.
I believe we should.
Go ahead.
I believe it's important that we, set, an intent for the funds. Because leaving it up to the schools, to decide, how and where to use the money, it will cause a conflict. I think if there is a school that's directly impacted by development, then that school should benefit from 100% or whatever the impact fees are. That's what I believe.
I think it's logistically nearly impossible. So depending on how much revenue it generates, if it generates $1 million, $1 million is going to be great in that we get currently it's about 50 to 54 million per year for capital from the county. So you add $1 million to that, great, you're at 55 million. Given the fact that $1 million is not going to get you a new HVAC unit, $1 million is not going to get you a renovation. Most of our renovation additions are like a renovation addition for a middle school is 80 million. Our last new elementary school cost 40 to 45 million. A new high school is now currently projected at 180 million. So, and that's partly because we don't have any coming down the pipeline. So it's a couple years out. But the idea that what could be a small segment would just be allocated for one school does not lend itself to the current application of the capital budgeting system. And in the last year, we have, when I was chair last year, I started a committee, and it was the standardization of the criterion for capital construction. So that now, as we move through the rank ordering of priorities, it will be driven by data. So we will be using the state's facilities condition index, as well as our own local, effectively indexer score based on the number of repairs that are going into a school for a particular item, as well as the population of the school is one criterion. So the number of students and the capacity of a school. But there are, I want to say, like 15 or more of these criterion that are going into the hopper to come up with, okay, if School Rainbows and Puppies has, it's over capacity, but it's only been in existence for 10 years, then most of its systems are not going to need to be replaced, renovated, or updated. It may need an addition, but our deferred maintenance is more than $500 million. To get on around that, we would need, $500 million to even begin to tackle that. And as time goes on, inflation is pretty significant right now. So we would look at that number to be increasing even as we do routine maintenance. So those, assuming this isn't going to generate tens of millions of dollars, I think it would be very hard to allocate it just to a specific school and have it make a difference, a substantial difference in that. And with the existence of redistricting, what may have been, okay, new development A came in as polygon 4056. But wait, 4056 was originally districted to schools A, B, and C, and now it's been redistricted. How does that money get reallocated?
How does it move with it?
Right, and so it increases the level of complexity for capital construction and capital planning to, in my opinion, be non-functional.
Hard to imagine 78 individual lock boxes.
Yes, and how are you, it's not just, 78 overlapping lockboxes.
Yeah.
Because on one school site, you have the Applied Research Laboratory, you have Homewood, you have the central office. Okay, well, if there's a development nearby there, which that doesn't even account for the elementary or the conventional middle or high.
No, with all due respect, Chair, I think, all valid points, but the problem here is when we have, you know, funds being collected for a specific purpose, which is a school impact fee, right? Overcrowding, that's the impact, and it's impacting one specific school, right? We're gonna now take those funds and put them in a pool that's accessible to all the schools, you know, throughout the county. I don't believe that's fair, especially when the school that is impacted the most might, you know, very well be the recipient of the least percentage of those funds. Because plenty of times we see some of the schools that need the money the most, they're not the ones getting it. And then it's up to discretion. The money can, I understand the logistics could be difficult with all the different lock boxes and all, but I believe if the school that is being impacted due to the new construction, the new development, then they should be entitled to that money because that's the reason the money is being collected in the first place. I mean, that's the basic principle. I don't think that schools in rural, you know, Howard County that they're not impacted any at all should be recipient of funds from a school, you know, such as, let's say, you know, Phelps Lock. Now, I know logistically it might be difficult, but I think, again, you know, if the school is being impacted due to development and we're collecting a fee based on that, then that school should be the recipient of the funds.
Yeah, I was originally gonna say, we've had a lot of support here in prior meetings for lock boxes. But I was gonna defer to someone who knows better how the actual spending goes, and Jen sort of just did a great job of doing that. Perhaps there's a middle ground to actually make it more transparent. I mean, it should already be transparent, what the fees are, what is causing those UPP fees in terms of where is the overcrowding, and make that very publicly transparent, but leave it to the folks who are the experts who know that it's going to cost X million of dollars to do a renovation. I mean, that's simply, it's incentive. Recognize that there's needs additional capacity here. And however one can accomplish that, whether it's building capacity, whether it's portables, whether it's redistricting, they know how to spend the money better than any of us do.
Jen and then Phil.
Two things. One, I don't know how you would then build a new school. So let's say it's contributed to overcrowding in the southeast quadrant because along Route 1, there's a lot of development. And so your next expected elementary school is elementary school 43 right next to Guilford Park High School. How would money be designated for that? Because a lot of the development is going to effectively move kids into that school. So I think it leaves out the ability, if you have lockboxes, then you don't have a lockbox for new development or for new schools. And then the unintended consequence would likely be a large increase in portables. Because that is the cheapest, easiest way to expand capacity at any given school.
But I thought they didn't count for capacity.
Well, she meant to physically.
No, physical.
Yeah, but they don't count on the output. Doesn't count on the output.
I was gonna ask, rather than having a whole bunch of different lockboxes, if maybe we do this, I'm just ignorant. But having a single lockbox where the money can only be accessed if the capital project involves capacity increases. Like you couldn't use the money to spend for replacing an existing system or rehabilitation. But if you added, had a capital project that was going to add 2 new classrooms, 5 new classrooms, then the money could be accessed for that project.
And that'd be regardless of where in the county it was.
Correct.
So
Apologize, I go long, but I got a lot of important details. You guys all got in the beginning of the meetings, the school surcharge report that comes from the state of Maryland, which shows how much is collected and where it goes. Guess what? Right now, we're collecting roughly 22 million a year toward capital expenditures in one-time money. And where is it being spent? They actually list line by line where it's going. Ironically, they made some exceptions in there. Most of them are capital projects. Some of it is bond debt payment, which is absolutely inappropriate for one-time funding to fund reoccurring bond interest. But there's also, there is some capital expenses toward maintenance, which unfortunately, the money used for capital growth is being used for alternate purposes, basically stealing from one to the other. We should definitely reinforce that as much as possible, funding for capacity expansion goes toward capacity expansion, not in order to lower the funding for the schools, but to make sure the funding they have gets used appropriately for the maintenance component of this. I know from PTA, I talk to them regularly. There are many people who love a dedicated pool of money that only goes to them and they don't have to deal with the others. But we are a shared school system. Every time a redistricting occurs, you can be redistricted to any one of the schools in the county, with exceptions. It's a shared pot. They're trying to manage it as efficiently as they can using matching money, government grants, available land, swaps, trades, everything under the sun. You start localizing it, and you basically have 78 local school districts that can operate, but it is very inefficient to try to do a one-person addition at $110,000 a kid every time development occurs. It's obviously more efficient using that. And I hate to say it, but I'm going to bring it up. Those school waiting periods in APFO were the other safety in the net. If you cannot proportion and prioritize and fund all the capital expenses you need for growth, as well as maintenance and additions rapidly and fast enough, that extra layer of protection was put in APFO to prevent schools from becoming crowded at the local level. So there's the global universal level for money, projects, priorities, and then at the local level of protection, so there's no hot spots that occur or reduced hotspots that occur that can be addressed. Please look at that report. I hope that's on our webpage because the state does not give that out too easily. And please could you post my cheesy little spreadsheet up on the chart too, because it is relevant whether we're collecting enough revenues to actually do these capital expenditures. Right now, as I see it, we will not, and that's an issue. Thank you.
I think we have a couple of different directions we can go. Xavier, if you want to make a motion, we can go that road. We can do nothing. If there's no motion, then the existing system exists, which is the school system has the discretion to make the determination as to how to best use the funds that are generated by the school surcharge and the UPP.
Can I just ask to get Jen's feedback and answer to the question, the idea that Phil posed?
That it would be for capacity
That
expansion.
it would have to be capacity only, but it didn't, we wouldn't lockbox it to any given school.
So
It is now.
right now, we have two things in the hopper that are capacity expansion, and that would be Oakland Mills Middle, which is not overcrowded, but because it needs a renovation at over 50 years old. And it can take, with an addition, it can take capacity from Thomas Viaduct and other surrounding schools. I want to say it's adding maybe 120 seats. And then the next one is at Logan Middle School, which is more fully capacitated, no, more fully enrolled. So I'm not sure that the level of complexity that it adds is worth the shoehorning it in. But then my next question is, when we look at something like Faulkner Ridge, where Faulkner Ridge is also being redeveloped as an early childhood center for presumably 3-year-olds pre-K. Could be 3 and 4s, but it's going to be a pre-K center. Is that new capacity? Because it's technically yes, and at the same time, it's really not going to do much to alleviate capacity at other schools because it's to fulfill blueprint requirements. So would that be allowable? I'm personally not sure that it gives you enough bang for your buck, but I would like to, can't find that report that you're talking about. Do you know when?
Maryland Department of Legislative Services mandated reports, school surcharge fees, Howard County fiscal year 2025.
Got that?
Was there anything else? Yeah, Lisa.
I always like things that sound like compromises. I want to remind everyone that we are talking about right now, correct me if I'm wrong, the UPP portion of where these goes, where these funds would go, not the whole surcharge. So the whole school surcharge would still not be in the lockbox. And we're talking about this portion going into lockbox. I have a question about, we've heard that there's an allowable amount of time to lock funds. I don't know if that is a factor, so people can weigh in on that if possible.
Could you say that again?
There's like an amount of time that you can lock funds, like you can't just have funds locked forever, saving up for a rainy day, to
Okay,
use them when you
okay.
have enough, so to speak.
I see what you're
So I
saying.
think that's something I'd like to hear an answer to, but putting that aside for a second. I like the idea of what Phil said, but maybe we could tweak the language a little to talk about regions. Like it has to be used, because I think that Xavier's point is well made. And a lot of other people, like Vanessa has talked about it, like it feels fair, like this is the reason you're having this money, this is where it should be used. But when you put it just to a school, an exact school, logistically, that could be impossible. And then having it to all schools but for this purpose seems very watered down. So to me, a compromise is to say a regional thing. Like it's not the specific school, but like you talk about a region, its capacity. So just tweaking what Phil was saying, because I kind of like his idea. Thank you.
If I can, what Jen said also, like, it doesn't have to go to that specific school, but if it went to another school, like Oakland Mills Middle, then you could send kids from a overcapacitated school there, so it
Right.
does have a direct impact on the school that was overcrowded, but the money didn't go to that school, it went to another school, and we sent those kids there, it does have a direct impact.
In some ways, so what we could then do, schools that would be considered appropriate for, redistricting, because if you're, at Oakland Mills, they're not gonna redistrict you to some school 25 miles away, right? It's some kind of radius, that the redistricting, pretty much will take place in. So can we at least then lock the funds, to that zone or that, radius?
It's the region. It goes back
Yeah,
to-
it's very similar. But I mean, what does that region look like? Thomas Viaduct and Oakland Mills are nowhere near each other, but yet Thomas Viaduct feeds Oakland Mills High School. So it's all relevant to where the redistricting goes. So that, again, I think it becomes very different. It ties hands to redistrict, which is ultimately another way to alleviate school crowding, which is concern.
Do we want to get into this level of detail in telling the schools what has to happen, how we allocate the funds? Or do we want to kind of make a policy statement that recognizes exactly what you're
Well, why
saying?
it's important, right, to me is because number one, the school that's impacted would then benefit from the funds. So there's no, argument to say, well, then, we implemented this new system. They're now dealing with overcrowded, school situation, and they don't have the resources to directly, deal with the overcrowding. So when you dilute those funds by spreading it over the entire county, the impact will be very little. And with a school now experiencing, higher capacity than intended for that school, without them benefiting 100% of those impact fees, I think that's a problem.
Again, this is a recommendation, an APFO recommendation that the county council is going to weigh in. If it gets to this point where they're actively considering it, they're going to ask the people who have to spend the money, how feasible is it to do this? We've heard one person just say, who's in the middle of it now, it's very difficult. I think we can convey the spirit of our interest of lockboxing it by either proposing a single lockbox or proposing something that says these funds should be used for expansion and leave it at that. If we get too far in the weeds, it's just gonna get lost in the books.
I think it dilutes the usability of the funds to solve problems. And there might be sufficient funds in the aggregate over a 2-year period to solve problems at 2 schools. But if we're trying to allocate even by region, but certainly by school, then it might take 10 years for one school to have enough money to solve a problem at any individual school. So my concern would just be diluting the ability of the school system to deal with the crowding as a system, as opposed to an individual school. I hear what you're saying. I get it.
Perfect world.
Yeah,
Perfect world, just that works, but we can save 2 schools, but we can't afford to save school, then no schools get saved. Right, then it's counterintuitive.
Can I make a motion? Move that, if we have to, if we're gonna deal with the lockbox issue, that I move that the UPP funds be designated as targeted for capacity expansion. Period.
So a global lockbox.
No, it's not a global lockbox.
It's a purpose.
It's a purpose.
It's agreed geographically.
No.
Purpose.
No, it's just for the purpose.
It's just for
Purpose
purpose.
for expansion, yeah.
Just purpose, no region.
Takes over.
Yeah, it's for expansion.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
In the spirit of compromise, and I could get behind that motion because, again, if the money can only be used for expansion, then the schools who need to expand will be able to access the funds. I could support that motion, yeah.
Do you want to second
so,
Yeah, I'll second.
it? There you go.
okay. Any further discussion?
I'm just gonna say that's the way the current school surcharge fee is already set up, with the exception of there's a little asterisk that allows them in special cases to use it toward non-capacity items.
And
I think that
my-
what-
we want to ask Chris.
Well, it's in there right now, state law and local law, so that would be your recommendation.
Yeah. I'd like to see what Jen thinks about it, honestly. About that motion.
I will not be supporting it for a number of reasons. One of which is at the state level, our matching funds have certain criterias of what is available to be matched. And it's already complicated. There's like 4 different buckets, and some of the buckets have different criterion. And our goal right now is try to get enough local funds that we're not leaving any money on the table at the state level. And I think this not only will complicate it to the point where we will leave money on the table at the state level, but also at the local level. And then you're going to end up with, we have a general fund balance from year to year in operating. We don't have that same concept in capital. Instead, we have unspent prior appropriations. So it would have to go to an appropriation. So if it was $1 million or $10 million, it would have to go towards an appropriation. And But I don't know how you do that when you have to accumulate year after year in order to get sufficient funds to make the capacity change. So,
Brent said that the current school charge is going along the way that this motion was being worded for UPP money.
mhm,
So,
and I'm trying to look that up, but
yeah, if that's the case though, isn't that currently how we're doing it? So these logistical concerns would apply to our current situation, right?
that has never, Bren, to my recollection, I don't recall where monies have been differentiated. Okay, it can only go towards this. They may be doing that on the back end, but if they are, I'm not aware of it. And I am aware that there are certain things that can't be funded, like FF&E, which is fixtures and furnishings. Like that can't be, you can't use state money for that. So I'm trying to look for the report
Sorry.
and
Maryland General Assembly.
Yep.
Look up mandated reports and then you search on school search.
so I don't, if they're doing it, it's news to me.
Just from a legal perspective, APFO was created, and you can go Google it, by a place up in New York trying to put in a bicycle path. Nothing to do with schools or fire trucks or anything. It went to the Supreme Court. Can you charge somebody for a pathway as a condition of developing your property? So what came out of that, and you can quote Montgomery County, they're the ones who have this in their videos. There must be a rational nexus. It's what you were charging for support, surcharges, fees, delays, whatever, must have a rational nexus to the result. But the other thing, which is very important, that enables you, that gives you the right, that gives you the ability to charge up to the entire market rate costs of the impact of a development. You can't go beyond, but you don't have to go less. You have the ability. Supreme Court says if it costs $110,000 a seat and you're gaining 10 seats, then there you go. You can charge up to that level as long as you can justify what your expenses are. And what we're doing is essentially that, except we're undercharging by a factor of, we're only charging 40% of the actual costs are right now, which is why we're in this cyclic hole of structural deficit. So lastly, what I'm saying is, when you're doing that rational nexus test, that's why you got to spend it on capacity and not repairs and other things so that you can get the full amount. And if you get the full amount, capacity expenses are not the school system's issue. They can use their funding for all other applications in the budgets.
So, Jen, correct me if I'm wrong here, but having listened to Dan make testimony to like the county council, for instance, every time that the school system wants to do a capital project, whether it's capacity or deferred maintenance, it's trying to maximize the amount of money that it can get, the participation from the state.
Correct.
And so trying to align the county's priority list with what the state will fund is always the trick.
Mhm.
And if we have a lockbox that's telling us that we can only use the money for this, but then we can't get the state matching, which is usually 2/3, 1/3 round numbers.
Mhm.
The state pays 1/3, we pay for 2/3. If we compromise our ability to get the state matching, then we lose that money. It's just gone because we're defining that this money that's generated by the UPP can only be used for this purpose. But if that purpose doesn't enable us to go get the 1/3 matching from the state, then we've kind of caused a problem for ourselves in the process. So I think, for what it's worth, I'm kind of with Jen. I mean, we have a motion and a second on the table. I have to say, I'm more in Jen's camp on this, but, I don't know if we're ready to take a vote. I'd like to say, I think we should, but is there more comment?
I just still have the question of, is that what we legally do? Because I find it really shocking to think that that's what we do now with the school charge fee. And we're losing matching funds doing that. I just find that really hard to believe. So one of those things isn't true. Either the school charge fee does not have to go to capacity, or it can't possibly be losing us state funding. You get what I'm saying?
I do.
I don't-
And I'll have to say, in the PTA land, I've seen an umpteen amount of social media mavens who go out there and try to aspire fear that we won't get matching unless we do blah. If you have your school surcharge rates set correctly, you can request any amount from the state, and as long as they've got the money to match it, they're gonna match it. It's not, that is not the issue right now. We're assuming that there's no matching coming from some weird reuse of this thing, but that's not the case.
Jen, any final thoughts for?
People are gonna vote what they're gonna vote. I'm not supporting it, and I hope I've been clear as to why. But again, I also know it's a suggestion of a recommendation to the council. And so if it were to pass, I would just ask that we also present the other side. That's it.
And lastly, I truly respect, if you have more options, you have more options.
Yes.
Understood.
Okay. Are we calling for the vote?
Call for the
Okay.
vote.
All right. Mr. Arterburn,
I'm gonna say no.
Mr. Brown,
No.
Mr. Casagrande,
No.
Mr. Crosby-Smith. Mr. Demue,
No.
Mr. Essen,
Yes.
Mr. Blackoff,
Because of the spirit that's intended here, I'm voting yes.
Mrs. Jones,
I'm going to say yes for the same reason as Paul.
Mr. Lovelace,
Yes, and that's the way we do it now.
Ms. Mallow,
No.
Ms. Markovitz,
I'm going to say yes too, because I think that the council will be able to get information with regard to the spirit of what we're recommending and possibly make it work with giving consent.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Wright.
No.
Ruh-roh.
This is where you need the Speaker of the House.
I know, right. Let's see what the total.
Everybody got
So I think
the
it's 6
costume
and
vote?
6, yeah.
I think you have the
No,
costume.
it fails every time.
Fails on a tie?
It's a majority to
It
win.
has to be.
Yeah,
It has to be a majority.
Yeah,
Is it
failed.
majority?
Majority.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it failed. Okay, fails.
Okay.
Okay.
So we need a business.
Good, because I was gonna have to be emailing people to give you your opposition. No, great, it will. Yeah.
With that, call to adjourn, or, motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second, third.
All in favor, aye. We're out of here.
I will send you the presentation to everyone.
Easy.
So can we talk about schedules? I mean,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
we only have one more on the schedule, right? We have the public hearing in June 4th.
No, May 20th is the public hearing.
Yeah,
Oh,